Hi everyone, today we woke up to major changes in Executive Condo. 5 years MOP is now effectively 10 years. 90% allocation for first timer for 2 years. Deferred payment scheme removed. And most people already know why the government did this. More first timer get access. Buyer must be financially ready, so that developer may bid lower for the land, and hopefully it will keep the EC prices more affordable. But I think there's another conversion people are not talking about enough. What happens financially if you lock yourself into an EC for 14 years? Because 4 years construction plus 10 years MOP means your flexibility is tied down for a very long time. So instead of debating emotionally whether EC is still good or bad, let's compare two pathways. So option 1, buy one EC under the new rules and hold for 14 years. Buy a private property today and every 4 years after SSD, reposition into another property. That means 12 years, property A, property B, property C. Now let's run a simple scenario. Okay, year 2026, age 35, buy EC 900 square feet at 1008 PSF, 1.62 million. The other one, property A, private property A, 1000 square feet at 1008 PSF, 1.8 million. After 4 years, 2030, the EC will TOP. And for private property A, it will clear the SSD, 5% annualized for 4 years. The amount will be about 2.817 million. Estimated PSF will be 2,108 PSF, and the gain about 388,000. So in the same year 2030, you buy property B. Let's say you upgrade to a bigger property at 1,002 square feet at 2,002 PSF. So you'll be paying about 2.64 million. And then after moving on 4 years later, after you clear the SSD, which is 2034, your 5% annualized for 4 years will bring that property B up to 3.28 million. So after 4 years, property B, 5% annualized, the amount will reach 3.2 million. The gain, roughly about 569,000. And then you sell property B, then you buy property C in 2034. For example, you buy the same size, 1,002 square feet, but you buy a slightly newer development and the PSF goes up to 2,009 PSF. So that will equate to a 3.48 million property. 4 years later, 2038, after you clear SSD, 5% annualized for 4 years, property will be at 4.22 million. Gain, 750,000. So with all the three property gains, A, B, and C to add up, you will reach an estimated about 1.7 million. But of course, a lot of people will say, well, how can you guarantee all this gain? But we're just looking at the best scenario, 5% gain over 4 years for every three properties. If we buy property, this is something that, we are aiming at, and I think 5% is not achievable. I think it's still reasonable. By the time property C clear the 4 years SSD, it will be 2038, and the buyer will be at age 47. And then 2 years later at 2040, the EC will actually clear the MOP. The buyer is actually at 49 years old. So if you look at the EC at 900 square feet, if we project the PSF at 3,002, the property will be worth about 2.8 million. The gain is about 1.26 million. So the thing about this is, on the side of the private property, it looks like there is more gain. But of course, there's something that we have not talked about. So with the three property for property A, B, and C, there is stamp duty involved. So for EC, the buyer stamp duty is at 50,600. So the buyer stamp duty for all the three private properties are as such. Property A, 59,600. Property B, $101,600. Property C, $148,400. So altogether, for the three properties, the buyer stamp duty will be at $309,600. So that is a 250,000 difference from the EC. So if you take it away from the 1.7 million gain, you're roughly at about 1.4 million. Having said that, it's gotta be about 200,000 difference, or it may be the same for the gain. But ultimately, there are things that we can look at with this chart, that for private property, every 4 years there's an exit. In case of any unforeseen circumstances, you can exit after every 4 years. For example, after property B, something might have happened and you might not upgrade. So at least that is an exit point for you, that you can do something about it. or during the course of the trade property, you face difficulties, you can rent out the whole apartment because it's a private property. Whereas for the EC, you're tied 14 years until 2040 before you can do anything. You cannot rent out the whole apartment and you cannot sell the apartment. Then everybody will say, so it's better to be buying private property. For every 4 years, if you exit and you follow this plan, your loan quantum actually become higher because you are buying higher price property after every 4 years. So your loan actually get higher, your interest actually gets higher as well. So for EC, then who should buy EC? Well, if you are ready to commit for that 14 years and you want to maintain a lower quantum, because as years goes by, in 14 years, your loan quantum are actually lowering down. So if you are at 35, your bank loan is 30 years, and with 14 years down the road, your loan quantum could be down by 1/3 at least. It's still a very safe option, but just that you are tied to that 14 years and you won't be able to do much during that 14 years. So buying into the property with the exit plan at 4 years, it gives you more option. So imagine after 4 years, your next property, you decide to buy one yourself and your partner can buy another one. The thing about EC is you must be sure about this one move because it's going to be 14 years. Whereas if you go into private property, you will be either making 1, 2 or 3 moves, but that depends on you. The advantage of the EC is still there. With a lower quantum, the gain that you generate might be the same if somebody go through the private property route. So with this new EC ruling, maybe more people will instead look at private properties. And when they look at private properties and then they decide to go into private properties, and private properties prices might go up. Then again, if private properties were to go up, the prices go up, will there be more cooling measure also affecting private properties? They can have 4 years SSD, they can have also 5 years SSD to curb the rise. I hope the comparison will let you have a better understanding of what you can do about upgrading your property or making your property plans. Because there's no right or there's no wrong. It's about how you want to manage your finances. Under the new rules, buyers need to be very sure about the next 10 to 14 years before committing. Because today buying an EC is no longer just a housing decision, it's a long-term lifestyle and financial commitment. Would you still choose an EC with 10-year MOP, or would you keep the flexibility with private property? Let me know.